micro meeting.
There we go. Hi,
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you today?
Good. I am so glad that we are here once again doing another mini class with for micro changes. And this one is for micro meetings. And so, true to our word, we are going to keep this to 25 minutes or under, but we want to bring to you some ideas on how to best utilize meetings in ways that maybe we don't always think of, and why it's so important that we do that. But let's first introduce ourselves. Louise, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, you bet. Well, we are part of the Inspirize network now, and we are here in your Kickass career, our collective. And what we're really doing is bringing folks together to create a different way of how we work at work. I'm here in Winnipeg, and I want to acknowledge that I live, work, and play on Treaty One territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, Dene, and also it is the national homeland of the Métis people here in the heart of Turtle Island. And I want to welcome everyone to our session today. Kim, I'm going to throw it over to you to give a quick intro, and then we can really dive in real quick.
Absolutely. So I'm hosting today from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Ganyagihaga Mohawk, colonially known as the island of Montreal, a place that has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst nations. As Louise mentioned, we are now under the umbrella of the Inspirize Network. We are co-founders of the Inspirize Network, where you can find your Kick-Ass Career Collective and other communities that are coming together to create work, whether you're an employee, an entrepreneur, business owner, or something in between, in a way that serves your soul, your heart, and your needs and desires as well. So Louise, what the heck is wrong with meetings? Like, why are we even talking about meetings?
Good golly, right? Meetings can gobble up so much of our time. Just looking at our calendar, sometimes we see, right, these solid chunks of meetings that we often feel like we don't have control over. Some of those meetings are ours, but a lot of them are not. And it's really interesting to actually see that, but also to know that about a third of those meetings on your calendar actually aren't required.
Wait, what? A third?
A third, 33% of those meetings shouldn't be meetings. And we're going to talk about how to clean that up a little bit. But there's research out there that shows that, what is it, $25 million per thousand people is wasted in these meetings that aren't really meetings. And that's just the dollars that go behind these unnecessary meetings, never mind the energy loss or the idea cost that it has. Because when these meetings aren't run effectively, they're not productive at all.
Yeah. Yeah, another research statistic that we saw is that US workers, so this is just in the US, we both work or live and work and play up in Canada right now, but I'm originally from the US. So US workers spend an average of 18 hours a week in meetings, with 31 hours per month in meetings that they themselves consider unproductive. So that's 31 hours. That's almost an entire work week of time spent in meetings that they are thinking are unproductive. So how do we get here? Well, meetings are an evolution of organizational democracy, right? The leader wants to make sure that people are more informed, and also wants to get more people involved in decision making. Meetings have been seen to increase engagement by employees and others, while also elevating their voices. We all know that it can kind of feel good to be invited into a meeting that was once a closed door meeting, and now having our voice heard at the table is a good thing. Like, we're not saying meetings themselves are bad. That's not it at all. So what is the problem with meetings then, Louise?
Well, the length for one, it is a problem. We are booking an hour for a meeting and we often don't end it early. We fill up that time. So the length, lack of preparation, lack of clarity of purpose. This is so big. Why are you going to that meeting? What's the whole point of the meeting? Lack of engagement. I bet everyone here at one time or another has the meeting up on their screen, especially now with virtual, and is doing something else. Right? And that's a big, big problem. Also the wrong people at the table. Really getting back to this idea of like, what is the whole purpose of the meeting? It's not to inform. That's a memo, right? So really understanding what that is. And again, just this idea of just having too many meetings is a really big problem. Kim and I, you and I, we have talked a lot about doing time audits and doing calendar audits, but when we have too many meetings, it's actually called meeting bloat. And it's real and it's very, very overwhelming. It's really tough. There's also this idea of virtue signaling and productive paranoia. So that's the fear of not having a full calendar. What is my leader going to think if they have visibility into my calendar and they don't see my calendar full from 9 a.m. on a Monday to 5 p.m. on a Friday, right? What does that mean? And so there's a lot of this belief or stories that all interplay in this idea of meetings and what our real challenges are.
Oh my gosh. And I know that like virtue signaling and productivity paranoia, that runs deep in the entrepreneurial world as well, right? It's like, oh, if I open my calendar fully so everybody can see that they can get on my calendar at any time, that looks like I'm not important enough to have the customers, the clients, the work to do. So I need to make sure that you only see that I have like 5 minutes here and you can't get on my calendar for 3 weeks. That's not a reason to keep your calendar full. Like, right? You want to actually be making connections and having conversations. So some of the things that we can do, right? We've just outlined a whole bunch of the problems, a whole bunch of the things that you're probably already feeling when we're talking about meetings and when we're looking at our calendars and seeing all the meetings on our calendar. So one of the things to keep in mind is the best business leaders recognize that they're actually a steward of other people's time. So when we're stewarding somebody else's time, and again, this is true if you are an organizational leader, or if you are even a solopreneur and you're setting up connectivity meetings, networking meetings, meetings with your clients, meetings with teammates or colleagues or partners or collaborators, we are stewarding other people's time. So we can shorten meetings. And we'll give you some hints on that here in just a second. But we're doing this entire session today on micro meetings. We could easily have created this as a workshop that we could sit down for 60, 90 minutes. We could have probably spread it out over an entire week, an hour a day or 45 minutes a day. Absolutely, we could have done that. We have guaranteed that this will be 25 minutes or less. All of our mini series teachings are. And the reason is we want you to make macro level changes in the way you do work in micro steps. And this is one of those micro steps is creating micro meetings. We're not going to be able to say it enough to make your meetings shorter. There is no reason that your default meetings are not set at 18 minutes, right? We set them at 30 and 60. Some people say do it at 25 and 50. Set it at 18, set it at 15, set it at 10. Create a stand-up meeting where you're literally standing up and keep it to less than 10 minutes. It's really, really hard to multitask and to be zoned out when you're standing around looking at people eye to eye, even if it's virtual. Set a timer. Close the meeting when it goes off, even if everything hasn't been closed up, buttoned up. It
Oh,
helps with people staying focused, right? It's like,
oh,
okay, we're
yes.
done.
And it goes back to that whole idea of like we're the stewards of other people's time. And so if you are not ending a meeting on time, you need to check yourself because now you are adding more stress and overwhelm to everyone else in that room. Never mind the cost of having that meeting run over. But I like that too, Kim. And I like the whole idea of like when a meeting is done. it's done.
It's done.
You don't have to fill up that time with more meeting. Have your questions answered and then be done with it. Maybe it's a 2-minute meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe you realize it shouldn't even be a meeting. End it, and start fresh.
I have a client who's an HR director, excuse me. And, um, interviews, you usually put an hour, 90 minutes on your calendar because you never know how long they're gonna last. Um, he said he loves it when when the interviewee comes in, he knows it's done in 20 minutes. And it's like, okay, hire them on the spot or move them along. He's
Mhm.
not there to drag their feet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, one of the things that I think is really, really important when we're talking about, so I am somebody that in my containers, and so anybody who is in one of my containers, you're like, Kim, you're being a hypocrite because you run these really long meetings. They're not meetings, right? In the sense that we're talking about here. Meetings, I do like to keep concise. When I have a session, a group session, I do tend to run long, but I will tell you at the forefront, this will probably run long. I have time afterwards that I can spend with you because there's a lot of emotional thought and spiritual processing that's going on. And it's a different type of situation. We're talking about the type of meetings that we traditionally think of when we're in a more corporate setting. But these types of meetings, like I said, are held throughout the entrepreneurial world as well. One of my favorite tools, ooh, Louise, meeting doomsday. Do you know what this is?
I didn't until you and I chatted about this, right? We chatted about this when we were saying, like, how do we reclaim our time? How do we get rid of those meetings that no longer serve us?
Yeah. So it means you wipe out every recurring meeting on your calendar. It's gone.
Mhm.
So there are some corporations that have IT go in and say, okay, as of this date and time, all recurring meetings across the company are gone. So then you have to figure out which ones you want to put back on and who you want to invite, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of like doing inbox zero, right? It's doing calendar zero, just wipe it all out. And I know that can cause a lot of anxiety, but it's okay. You'll figure out how to get the right meetings for the right amount of time with the right people
Yeah.
at the table if you do that. Louise, what are some ways that we talked about in terms of like really shortening, tightening up meetings? Like, what are some of the things that we can do?
Yeah, we want to talk about meetings and like the whole purpose of what the meeting is, right? This is an opportunity for you to get questions answered, right? We're not rehashing what we already know. We aren't informing. Informing is a memo. It's not a meeting. And we're also being really, really clear on those questions that we need answers. So they're meant for creativity, they're meant for ideation, they are not meant for reporting. I don't know how many times I have stood in being in IT and product development. We have progress meetings all the time, right? It is a waste of time to have somebody read from a spreadsheet. That is not the purpose of a meeting. It is not meant for that. It is not meant for reporting at all. It is meant to connect with the right people, ask the right questions. We often think we go to a meeting to talk things out, and that's like goodbye diversity, right? We don't get that opportunity to lean into any of that, and we just fall into this whole group think. They reported, I reported, they said, I said. It doesn't lend for that real purpose of what a meeting is for. I think the agenda is a big part of it. I always recommend to my clients to say, if there is no agenda, if you don't know why you're going, don't go. But also, it's the structure of the agenda. Really think about the agenda and the purpose of your meeting as to have questions answered and not just topics you're going to talk about, right? Get really, really specific. That way, everybody knows why they're there. And you also know when the meeting's over, when your questions are answered.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so huge. I love that one, right?
Yeah.
Start with the question. And
Yeah.
and for anybody, so Louise mentioned using memos. So anybody who is younger than Gen X, which we both are, it's an email or a Slack. Teams, use Teams, whatever it is.
Absolutely. What about Kim? What about who do we like? Who's in these meetings? If we're talking about having really productive meetings, how do we go about that?
Yeah, so that it becomes tricky, right? Because, and I am a huge advocate for inclusivity. Um, there is a time and a place for inclusivity. When we're looking at having a meeting, we need to think about, I love using RACI charts. So these are, and I'm not going to remember, so who's responsible, who's accountable, I forget the C, and who needs to be informed. Generally speaking, those that need to be informed don't need to be at the meeting, but we want to make sure that the RAC are there. Um, because we want to make sure that the decision makers, those that are involved in whatever is moving forward, are actually part of the conversation. That's the inclusivity. I would say that statistics have shown if it's less than 5 people that are at the table too, not a meeting, it's a conversation. So again, really thinking about, can we just have a quick one-off conversation because there's 3 of us here that just kind of need to noodle something through? Fantastic. Find a corner, find a place, get online, get on the phone, whatever you need to do to just have that conversation. The other part of it is the freedom to say no. Like, we very often think that, well, we've been invited to this meeting, we have to say yes,
Yeah.
but you don't. You can decline. You are not signaling that you don't care, right? You're signaling that I don't believe I need to be here. Maybe ask a question before you decline it to make sure, but being curious and asking what that purpose is and why you were invited is hugely important to knowing whether you accept or decline. But blindly accepting and filling your calendar, that's how we get bloated.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
What are
Absolutely.
things you mentioned, this thing of meeting audits, and I actually did one this morning, which was fascinating. But like, tell us more about some of the things that our listeners can do right now. What can they do right now?
Yeah, I think, before you take any meeting off of your schedule is to really look at it and say, like, how present are you in those meetings, right? You don't know if you should be there or if maybe somebody else should be there, or even if it's a meeting that you need to, maybe you get at the highlights. Like if you're not paying attention to what's going on, you don't know what's going on. And so when we talk about not just auditing your weekly calendar of meetings, I'm talking about paying attention and auditing your energy and your attention in those meetings, right? Really start to think of that. And then also have a look at if there's a time of day when you're usually stuck in a meeting, right? Does that coincide with your energy levels? Oftentimes we book meetings where we can often be in the most productive and creative spaces in our day, and we're using it up for a meeting. And so really start to audit your flow, your energy levels, but also how present you are in those meetings, because it's going to play a factor for sure.
Oh yeah. I was where I was looking at it today was like, how many of them are internal versus external? How many of them as an entrepreneur are business
Yeah.
building versus client building? And there's a difference.
Mhm.
Or client focused. How long and how frequent are recurring meetings? Could these be shortened up? Could they be used in a Slack or a Teams or an email? Right? If this is just a reporting out meeting, is there a different way to do it? Because here's the thing, we think because we are having a meeting that people are getting the information.
Yeah.
That's not true because
Yeah.
people are checked out, right?
And that you bring up a really good point, Kim, too, is that you're not the only person in the meeting. If you're struggling with paying attention or you're struggling with understanding how important this meeting is, there are others that are probably in the same boat. So have a conversation about refocusing the purpose of the meeting. See what other folks are. It could be that everybody feels like the meeting is unproductive, yet you're doing it because it's been a long standing meeting for who knows how long, right? Like shake things up a little bit, start to reclaim your time and your energy back. And we're not just talking about shortening the meetings, right? Having a micro meeting is about having a shorter meeting. We're also talking about like having less meetings in your week and really starting to reclaim your time back.
Mm. So those are the reasons why we need to start looking more seriously at how meetings are affecting our lives and our work and our ability to be productive, efficient, and effective, and engaged. Like we want to be engaged in our work. And some ideas on how you can do that both for the long term in your team, in your organization, for yourself, and things that you can do right away, right? This idea of both a time audit, a calendar audit, and an energetic presence audit is huge. So spending a little bit of time with that right away can give you the insight into, oh, maybe we can switch some things up here. Louise, we're doing this mini class series on making macro action, or excuse me, taking micro actions from macro results. I get the mini, micro, macro. There we go.
I know. Well, because it really is like we are talking about these small incremental changes that really do add up over time. You and I, we've seen it over and over again. And so I know we get stuck on the macro because it's like big changes are coming, everyone. And a big change has happened, like Kim said at the beginning of our time together today. You can find us in the Inspire Eyes Network. Kim, do you want to put a link in the chat for everyone that they can connect with us there? Please join us for our next session, our really quick chit chat and conversation around what is it? Movement. I like this because today I was feeling like I needed movement. And how do I work that into a really busy schedule of a day? So we're going to talk more about micro movements for macro results on January 25th. So please join us. Join us every couple of weeks. If you want to check out our last sessions that we've had, because we've been doing this now for a little while, hop on into that network and you'll be able to see those recordings or find us here on YouTube and have a look there too.
Perfect. All right. We did it in 21 minutes.
Done. Questions answered. And this meeting, oh, where's my gavel?
Oh, adjourned. Bye, everyone. See you later.
Here.